Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Here are today's top stories. President Trump deploying troops to Portland, Oregon. He says it's to protect ICE facilities under siege from Antifa and other domestic terrorists. President Trump will meet with top congressional leaders Monday, less than 48 hours before a potential government shutdown. The largest ever civil fine issued to Amazon by the Federal Trade Commission. The tech giant will have to pay $2.5 billion in a deceptive practices lawsuit. We have analysis. Millions of Americans suffer from chronic back pain, and there is often no physical explanation for it. Vital Signs' Brendan Fallon shares insights from a pain management doctor about how pain is learned by the brain.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
President Donald Trump ordered Saturday that troops be deployed to Portland, Oregon. It's in response to escalating clashes outside federal immigration facilities. In his announcement on Truth Social, Trump said the Secretary of War should provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. He also said he's authorizing full force if necessary. The ICE facility in Portland has drawn frequent demonstrations that at times have erupted into violence, leaving federal agents injured and prompting assault charges against several protesters. Earlier this month, protesters set up a guillotine outside the site, an act the Department of Homeland Security called unhinged behavior. DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement that the action is being taken after weeks of violent riots at ICE facilities and attacks against law enforcement. An ICE facility in Portland has been repeatedly attacked by Antifa-linked militants throughout the summer. This kind of anti-ICE violence happened in other so-called sanctuary cities as well. Last week, 3 people were shot at an ICE facility in Dallas, Texas. The DHS's new move comes after President Trump designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Democratic Senator from Oregon Ron Wyden says in an ex-post, quote, "Stay out of our city." The move is the latest example of the Trump administration using the military as part of a push to reduce crime in American cities. The governor of Oregon responded to Trump's announcement Saturday.
In my conversations directly with President Trump and Secretary Noem, I have been abundantly clear with them that Portland and the state of Oregon believe in the rule of law, and we can manage our own local public safety needs. There is no insurrection, there is no threat to national security, and there is no need for military troops in our major city.
As a government shutdown looms, Senate Democrats will hold a conference call today as the caucus discusses strategy. And tomorrow, top congressional leaders will meet with President Donald Trump at the White House. The 11th hour meeting with White House Speaker Mike Johnson, House Speaker Mike Johnson, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer comes after Trump canceled the meeting earlier this week with Democrats Jeffries and Schumer. A shutdown will begin Wednesday if Congress can't strike a deal by the end of Tuesday night. This week, the White House Office of Management and Budget has asked federal agencies to prepare for a reduction in force, the government's term for a layoff, as Senate Democrats maintain their position of forcing a government shutdown. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has the details.
The President of the United States is saying, I'm going to take away your health care, and if you stand up for that, well, then I'll turn around and lay off people, fire workers.
Senate Democrats who refused to extend government funding past September 30th are now blaming President Trump for taking preemptive action on an imminent government shutdown by preparing a reduction in force of non-essential federal government personnel. The Office of Management and Budget's letter to federal agencies seeks to rein in spending in preparation for a lapse in funding that may start on October 1st if Senate Democrats refuse to fund the government.
Well, let's be clear about where we are. House Republicans passed a continuing resolution last week to keep the government funded and open. There is not one legitimate reason that Democrats should not support a continuing resolution. They have voted for it every time when Joe Biden and Barack Obama were president.
The messaging from Democratic leadership has been to portray the expiration of COVID-era healthcare tax credits as a Republican choice to cut healthcare, despite the fact that it was Democrats who set the expiration of those premiums back in 2021 through their Inflation Reduction Act reconciliation bill.
Republicans have made their intentions clear as it relates to healthcare of the American people. They want to destroy it. Republicans have spent the entire year destroying the health care of the American people. Our position is clear. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care.
Republican leadership remains open to discuss some form of extension of these health care credits. Senate Democrats will have another chance at avoiding a government shutdown next week when the Senate will likely vote again on the House-passed continuing resolution.
A lot of these folks get auto-enrolled. The payments are made directly to the insurance companies. Like I said, this is a program that needs reform, but I think everybody is willing to sit down and talk about how to make that happen in a context where it should be discussed, not as a hostage to keep the government open. I mean,
it's important to note that despite being in the majority in both chambers, Republicans have conceded to maintaining current levels of government spending instead of reducing them. President Trump supports congressional Republicans' efforts to maintain the government open and avoid unnecessary reductions in force of the federal government. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
On Sunday morning, a suspect is confirmed by local officials in connection with the shooting at the American Fish Company restaurant in Southport, North Carolina.
Approximately 9:30, members of the Southport Police Department were dispatched to cause of shots fired with multiple injuries at the American Fish Company at 150 Yacht Basin Drive here in Southport. Reports came in rapidly of a boat sitting in the waterway, reports of a subject shooting multiple patrons of the establishment. Unfortunately, 3 were wounded fatally. We have 5 injured that are at area hospitals still receiving care. Suspect is a now Max Edge. He's been arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 5 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 5 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious injury. Some facts that we have at this time is that we believe that this was a targeted location. We appear that he acted in what we call a lone wolf. He acted alone. This is highly premeditated from what we're seeing at this time, and we feel there are no other threats to our community.
The gunman opened fire from a boat into a waterfront restaurant in North Carolina, killing 3 people and wounding at least 8 others on Saturday night. Authorities did not immediately release the names of those killed or provide details on the conditions of the wounded victims. 4 lives lost after heavy rain triggered devastating floods, including 3 in the historic mining town of Globe, Arizona, where floodwaters on Friday forced residents onto rooftops, scattering about 1,000 propane tanks. In just 24 hours, over 2.5 inches of rain fell in the town, and with another storm moving in Saturday, rescue crews were forced to pause their search as creeks surged once again. On Saturday, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs declared a state of emergency to speed rescuers to the area. From a major UN speech and moves against domestic terrorism to changes on health policy, the Trump administration takes on multiple fronts. NTD's Daniel Monahan has your White House Week in Review.
On Sunday, President Trump and other top administration members spoke at a Charlie Kirk memorial service.
He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose.
Around 200,000 people showed up in Arizona for the event. At the UN General Assembly in New York on Tuesday, President Trump called uncontrolled migration the #1 political issue of the time.
Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders.
Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after his UN address. He later wrote on Truth Social that Ukraine could get back the original borders from where the war started. Trump also hosted a meeting of Muslim leaders on the sidelines of the UN gathering.
And we're here to see if we can get the hostages back and get the war over and get back to life in the Middle East.
Turning to health, Trump held a White House news conference saying that prenatal use of Tylenol and vaccines could be tied to autism risk.
You shouldn't take it during the entire pregnancy.
Senator Bill Cassidy said there's a concern that women will be left with no options to manage pain in pregnancy. President Trump welcomed Turkish President Erdogan to the White House this week.
It's a pleasure to be with President Erdogan of Turkey, and we've been friends for a long time, actually, even for 4 years when I was in exile, unfairly, as it turns out.
An ICE facility in Dallas, Texas was targeted in a shooting, leaving 1 detainee dead, 2 more injured.
The radical left is causing the problem. The right's not doing this. They're not doing it, and they better not get them energized, because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people.
The alleged gunman, who took his own life, wrote anti-ICE on an unused bullet. Trump issued a presidential memorandum on Thursday aimed at countering domestic terrorism.
These are anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired by wealthy people, some of whom I know, I guess.
We are properly going to chase them down like the domestic terrorists that they are, and our streets and our communities are going to be safer.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Former FBI Director James Comey was indicted, accused of making a false statement and obstruction in a criminal case.
My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system.
He did terrible things at the FBI, and but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
President Trump welcomed the elite Marine Corps silent drill platoon to the Oval Office, personally presenting each member with a presidential challenge coin.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We appreciate the opportunity.
Well, it's my honor. You're great people.
President Trump attended the 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black. Golfer Scotty Scheffler says Trump treats everybody the same and with the utmost respect.
Whether you're the person serving us lunch or the caddy on the golf course or the guy who's the president of the club that we're at, he treats everybody like they're the greatest person in the world.
And the Elon Musk-Trump thaw continues. The Trump administration announced it will use Musk's AI Grok chatbot for federal agencies. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Amazon settling with the Federal Trade Commission for $2.5 billion in a deceptive practices lawsuit. The agency alleged Amazon tricked people into signing up for its subscription service, Amazon Prime, and for making it exceedingly difficult to unsubscribe. Now the tech giant must pay $1 billion to the FTC, the largest ever civil fine, plus $1.5 billion to consumers who the FTC says were wronged. Amazon does not admit to any wrongdoing. Joining us now for analysis is Mike Leon, host of the news commentary podcast called Can We Please Talk? Mike, it's great to see you. How significant is this civil penalty?
Very significant. Good to see you, Chris, as always. You know, this is such a big moment right now because anybody who's worked in product and technology like I have for, close to a decade plus at a couple of different Amazon competitors knows that there's the UI UX terminology, which is the user interface and the user experience. And the interface part of this with respect to Amazon's products and services, remember, folks that use Amazon Prime from the shopping perspective, we're talking about the content part of this, where you would sign on to Amazon Prime to watch shows and movies. There's a lot of dark patterns that were embedded in that, meaning that the customer knew how to sign up, but didn't know how to cancel their subscription, end their trial, or stop their service completely without going through a bunch of different rabbit holes and dark patterns, as it's called in the industry, to be able to unsubscribe. And that's kind of the core of this suit, which was interesting, Chris, because the suit was about to start this week in U.S. District Court. The settlement kind of came out of the blue. And now, like you said, $1 billion in penalties to the FTC, $1.5 billion in refunds to customers out there. If you've been a Prime subscriber between 2019 to 2025, you're probably going to get a refund, or you're going to get some type of form to fill out to join in this suit so you can get your money.
Yeah, maybe I'll get some. We'll see. And to your point about dark patterns, documents discovered before the trial showed Amazon executives and employees discussing Prime with comments like subscription driving is a bit of a shady world, and leading consumers to unwanted subscriptions is an unspoken cancer. So with your experience, were you surprised to hear about these comments?
Not at all. I mean, Chris, here's the thing, right? Like, let me take people inside the product manager role and working with engineering and design. So a couple of the apps that I worked at, Madison Square Garden, HBO, Discovery, right? These are all competitor apps. Some of them are direct to consumer, meaning you have to sign on and actually subscribe and pay a monthly service. Whereas some of them work in conjunction with your television provider, right? Those are called TV Everywhere ones, where you just sign in with your Optimum or Verizon or whatever it is, and you get access to the service. The biggest things that we look at in the product world are the onboarding flow. So when a customer comes onto the application, what do they see in front of them? How do we collect profile information? How do we collect their credit card information to eventually subscribe to the service? And then how do we tell them that they can opt out, they can opt into a free trial? And then how do we bubble up the privacy policy in terms of use and service with respect to the platform and service, right? So all of those things go through the legal lens, because a lot of the times you're working in conjunction with the legal team to make sure that everything is on the up and up and you're in compliance. And while the FTC doesn't necessarily monitor things like I just mentioned with respect to the customer and the onboarding flow and the happy path for them to be able to subscribe or cancel a service, it does monitor the financial transactions part of this, and it does have the Restore Online Shoppers Confidence Act, which is kind of what triggered all of this, right? Shoppers get this subscription, yet they can't cancel it. And I remember vividly, by the way, Chris, telling my wife a lot of this because of the website, because the mobile experience is different from the web desktop version experience. And I'm like, I don't know how to cancel this service. This is a dark pattern. Like this should be front facing. So to see this actually come to light right now is actually really funny to me as somebody who's worked in the industry. But I'm not surprised by the comments, but I do know that in the technology space, you work in compliance with legal to make sure you're presenting all the information, especially when it comes to capturing user data, capturing credit card information, how you're storing it, records retention part of this. Amazon just unfortunately was tricking customers and not giving them a clear path, a clear defined path for them to be able to cancel the subscription. And that's why they got hit with this fine.
Now, Mike, something you mentioned, how this suit was settled very quickly. I mean, 3 days after the start of the trial. As a news commentator, you follow a lot of cases like this. So how does that time frame compare to other cases?
Well, I think, Chris, I'll go back to something you said before I came on. Amazon admits no wrongdoing in this. That's what happens when you do a settlement. You get to play the, hey, we're just complying with the FTC part of this, and, nothing was really going to happen. I look back at, and it's not apples to apples. If you look at the Fox News Dominion lawsuit, that got settled as well, as it was about to start up on a trial basis, and it got settled for the $787 million. So a lot of the times what happens is when you get a settlement, the company gets to admit they didn't do anything wrong. They get to meet with their legal team and decide, is this speeding ticket, for lack of a better term, and the fine associated with this speeding ticket enough for us to continue moving forward? Or do we want this to play out in the public space, like you just mentioned, Chris, where people like you and I and other news agencies start to cover this story a little bit more, and it could potentially harm the business, and future prospective customers that are either using the retail service engine part of this with Amazon Prime, or the content platform and the where everybody goes to watch shows and documentaries from Amazon Prime. So I think the company chose the former. Let's see if we can get this settled. What's a number that we could agree upon? I'm not, the time frame was a little weird because, like I said, the trial was about to start. But a lot of the times, if you talk to any lawyers out there, they'll tell you that the biggest goal is to get a settlement, especially on the plaintiff side. And that's what they were able to secure here. And Amazon does their side, which is we don't have to admit any wrongdoing.
All right, Mike Leon, thank you so much for your insight on this.
Thanks, Chris.
Coming up, a shooting at a Dallas ICE facility left one detainee and the suspect dead, and officials have said that ICE officers are facing more than 1,000% increase in assaults against them. What's behind the increasing violence against federal law enforcement? We have that and more after this break.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjion Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed.
A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end and life is renewed once again.
The magical painting.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. How to safely build a fire, and how to control the flames. But I can only teach wildfire prevention. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Four people were shot Wednesday at an ICE facility in Dallas. One detainee plus the shooter are dead, while two people are still in critical condition. Authorities say anti-ICE messages were found on the suspect's ammunition. No law enforcement officials were injured in the incident. But this is the third time ICE and CBP officials have been targeted in Texas this year. NTD's Tiffany Meyer taps Kyle Scheidler for insight. He's the director and senior analyst for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism at the Center for Security Policy. He's also the editor of Unmasking Antifa, 5 Perspectives on a Growing Threat.
Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the FBI special agent in charge said rounds found near the suspect had messages that were anti-ICE in nature. He went on to call the attack targeted violence. What does that label mean in terms of how this investigation will be carried out?
Well, it certainly suggests that federal law enforcement believes that it was ICE and not the detainees who were the targets. There was video as well of gunshot rounds to the ICE building itself that entered the building, not just the van that was fired on. So they clearly believe that this is another example of the ongoing attack against ICE officers and other federal agents that are involved in enforcing immigration law in this country. Unfortunately, there's been a massive uptick in violence against ICE officers all around the country.
Now, to your point, officials have said that ICE officers are facing more than a 1,000% increase in assaults against them. And ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons says he's never seen anything like this, especially against ICE. What do you make of the increasing violence against law enforcement officers? Is this just about rhetoric?
It's not just about rhetoric. This is about a growing far-left extremist network which has undertaken to target federal law enforcement in order to prohibit them from enforcing the law. They are quite openly attempting to prevent the enforcement of federal law, federal immigration decisions, using a wide variety of methods, everything from blockades to targeted assaults and felonies, and now moving all the way into dangerous assaults, the use of firearms. This very facility was reportedly targeted by a bomb that was reportedly potentially a live explosive. So we are seeing really an uptick in violence from the far left network that has really made ICE front and center of their targeting over the last year.
Now, expanding on that, Lyons said in response to an attack on ICE agents in Texas back in July this year, quote, "This is precisely what we have been warning against as disinformation and dangerous politically motivated rhetoric spreads." What are some solutions here?
Well, I think for starters, the Trump administration is doing a good job in realizing that it needs to address the larger far left network, which is empowering these attacks. The executive order from the president targeting Antifa and other far left extremists earlier in the week is obviously a good start in that regard. The president tweeted out that he expects to follow that up with additional executive orders to specific agencies coming up soon. We don't know exactly what those moves will be, but it's pretty clear that the Trump administration intends to deal with this threat.
Now, on the note of that executive order, there are still some questions around its legal impact. You actually have a book called Unmasking Antifa: 5 Perspectives on a Growing Threat. Talk to us about the threat Antifa poses and further thoughts on this executive order by Trump.
Sure. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to the threat based on Antifa, the first of which is that they aren't an organization. That's simply not true. In fact, there are numerous Antifa organizations spread all around the country and even internationally in Western Europe and throughout South America. So Antifa is absolutely an organization, and more than that, it's a network. It's a network of decentralized organizations that participate together to enforce their ideology, to target their opponents. So the claims that by the opponents of the president that Antifa does not exist and cannot be targeted by law enforcement are simply false. Now, the question of whether it is a domestic terrorist organization is another matter. Officially, there is no designation process for a domestic terrorist organization. There's not a list of domestic terrorist organizations that you can add a group to. So I think what the president is really saying with that statement is that he views this threat as a threat to national security, and that he expects all elements of government power to take action to deal with it, whether that's the Department of Justice, the Director of National Intelligence, or the State Department, in looking at what ties there may be to foreign groups, which might justify a foreign terrorism designation.
Very big moves for sure. Kyle Schadler, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Coming up, China unveiled its climate goals for 2035 at the UN General Assembly this week. Does the global climate agenda serve the Chinese Communist Party's push for greater influence? We'll take a closer look after the break.
This land, our America, built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out. Even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hard-working neighbors are facing a hunger crisis. Many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America, not just a name, but an action. Working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community. And demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it gets hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Please call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double an impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Welcome back. The U.S. and China are colliding on multiple fronts, from military ties to trade and immigration rules to social media. The ripple effects are seen everywhere, from American farms to your smartphone. Starting off, Russia is stepping up military cooperation with China. It's reportedly training Chinese troops in airborne operations and even sharing expertise on airdropping armored vehicles. A defense think tank says this could boost Beijing's ability to take over Taiwan, while the U.S. has remained deliberately vague on whether it would intervene. Taiwan, meanwhile, is ramping up defense spending and showing off new anti-drone systems. And while Washington watches Beijing closely, there's also friction on the economic front. China just announced it will give up some special trade perks it's been receiving as a developing country under the World Trade Organization. Developing countries get more time to live up to trade agreements. They also receive assistance from abroad and are exempt from rules that richer countries must follow. The U.S. and Europe have been pushing for that change, arguing China has too big of an economy to keep those benefits. At the same time, President Trump says he'll use tariff revenue to support American farmers who've been hit hard by China's halts on U.S. soybean purchases. This comes as China turns to Argentina for its soybean imports instead of the U.S. due to ongoing trade tensions between the two countries. Meanwhile, the White House is targeting the H-1B visa program, proposing a shift from a lottery-based system to favor higher-paid, higher-skilled foreign workers. The administration says the move is designed to protect American jobs from cheaper foreign labor. That follows Trump's new $100,000 fee per visa, which critics say could impact tech companies and immigrants alike. And continuing with tech, TikTok is staying alive in the U.S. for now. President Trump signed an executive order approving a deal that turns TikTok's U.S. operations into a new American-led venture, with Oracle acting as security provider. The move is meant to protect data from Chinese influence while keeping the app's millions of American users online. The Chinese regime this week announced its 2035 climate goals at the UN General Assembly. Does the worldwide climate movement play into the hands of the Chinese Communist Party as it seeks global control? NTD's Don Ma spoke to Michael Lucci, founder and CEO of State Armor, for insight.
Can you give us what were your thoughts when you heard China's move to set a goal of cutting 7 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2035?
This is just happy talk from China. They're the biggest polluter in the world. They've never cut any emissions in any way, anywhere. They just want to say that 10 years from now, maybe we'll cut by a little bit. Meanwhile, we want all the rest of you, the United States, Europe, etc., continue your complete deindustrialization of your economy so that we could take away your manufacturing base and we could produce the tools of war and industrial production, and you cannot. That's what China really wants here. They want all of us to deindustrialize, and they want all of us, furthermore, to adopt technologies that they control. And let me be really specific here. Solar inverters that are coming from China for our green energy technology, batteries that are coming from China for our green energy grid, these have kill switches in them. So China understands that the greatest power that they could have over the United States is the ability to turn off our power.
So in the end game here, what is China's goal?
The end game is we are deindustrialized and we are running our energy grid on things that they can turn off and on at their whim. I mean, that's exactly where they want to go. Candidly, that's where they already are with Europe. Germany has been massively deindustrialized. And if you look at the headlines from our friends on the other side of the Atlantic, you can find headlines where they say explicitly, China controls a kill switch for the energy grid of the entire continent of Europe. That's because Europe was so ambitious, in the bad way of ambition, to adopt all this green energy nonsense and all the technologies that come with it that, oh, by the way, happen to all be backdoored by communist China, whether it's windmills that are spying on military bases in Texas or military bases in Germany that have connectivity devices on them, whether it's solar panels, whether it's solar inverters, whether it's batteries. These are all coming with kill switches. And so the question should not be, should we in the Western world adopt green energy? The first question is, should we adopt any energy source that is controlled and has kill switches from the Chinese Communist Party? And the absolute bipartisan answer to that question needs to be absolutely not. We cannot let them put kill switches into our energy grid, into Europe's energy grid. That's a hard no. After that, we can have a conversation about what our energy makeup should look like, but it needs to be American made and resilient against the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, Michael, let me ask you this. Under what circumstances would China actually use this kill switch on a wide scale? Because I would imagine if China did that, the consequences would be catastrophic.
I think that what China really wants to do is to surround the United States and surround Europe. And let me say what I mean by that. They want to have us so compromised that we begin to think that we shouldn't even consider resisting them in any way. If they do something super aggressive in the South Sea, if they were to even invade Taiwan, what they want us to be thinking is, if we are going to go help friends in Taiwan or Japan or the Philippines, if we're going to go do that, they're just going to flip the switch here at home to slow not just our military deployments overseas, but also to sow absolute chaos amongst our civilian population. Our bipartisan leaders, if you get Democrats and you get Republicans, they will describe this in the same way. They say that China is preparing for a 0 day to sow everywhere chaos all at once, all across the United States on that day where maybe it's they go do something with Taiwan. Maybe it's they do something provocative somewhere else in the South Sea or in their theater. That's when they want to be ready for that. And really, I think what they want to do is never use the power, because on the American side, we look at how booby-trapped they have our whole economy and we just say, we can't resist them. It's too late. That's where China's trying to get to.
Okay, so given the current situation that we are in now, whether it's the kill switches that you mentioned, how should the U.S. respond?
We should be ripping out anything coming to China with kill switches. And more specifically, when a Chinese company sells a solar inverter with an undisclosed backdoor, or when a Chinese company sells a battery with an undisclosed kill switch in it, that is massive consumer fraud. That is massive deceptive trade practices. And what we're starting to see now, and we really need to see this scale up, is state attorneys general are bringing the rule of law to the Chinese Communist Party. They are suing them for massive consumer fraud. So this is what we need. Sue them for massive consumer fraud, win a big claim against them, and use that money to rip and replace all these compromised Chinese Communist Party technologies. Sue, rip, replace, make them pay for the booby traps that they put into our system.
Can you put into context the actions taken by the Trump administration versus previous administration on this front specifically?
Well, President Trump is obviously much less convinced of the veracity of the whole green agenda. I mean, he thinks it's broadly a fraud. He's broadly correct on all of that. He understands that we can't be dependent on communist China for our energy or really for anything else, rare earths, he's already negotiating with China. And the very first thing China did in negotiations is they said, we're cutting you off from rare earth elements that you need for all sorts of parts of your economy. So President Trump understands that they have leverage over us and we need to wind that down. And he understands that we'll use that elsewhere if they have it, specifically green technologies going into our grid. President Trump, I think, is pretty clearly reorienting global supply chains away from the Communist Party. He's saying, if you want to sell to the United States, we want you as divorced as possible from the supply chains of the Chinese Communist Party, because we don't want them being able to intercept what we need here at home. That's his big objective that we can see clearly. He also objects to and rejects the whole sort of green radicalism. But the bigger objective is he's reordering global supply chains that serve the United States to not be beholden to the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, Michael, just one last question. Can you talk to us about the influence that the CCP is having on the world currently versus its influence before? Has it increased or decreased?
Communist Party's influence is unfortunately massively increasing over time, whether it's 20 years, whether it's 5 years, but let's just talk about 5 years. Think about the fact that they unleashed upon all of us, the entire world, a global pandemic. They lied through their teeth every step of the way of that pandemic. They lied everything about that pandemic. And of course, they caused the pandemic through their carelessness at best. Even though that happened, the rest of the world has actually become more dependent upon supply chains from the Chinese Communist Party, whether it's rare earth, solar, all these other things. And so their influence is spreading, and they are using that coercion against other countries. And that's why it's so important that the United States lead a breakaway to create supply chains of freedom, supply chains that are controlled by democracies, free countries, and their allies and their partners who they can trust. That's the problem here, is they have provoked the world in an unforgettable way through the COVID pandemic and all of their malfeasance through that. Yet the rest of the world has failed to respond, and candidly, President Biden failed to respond in any significant way to get us off dependence on the Chinese Communist Party. That's why President Trump is quite different. He recognizes that, really it's an existential danger, and he's saying we need supply chains that they cannot intercept and control. One last thing on that. I mean, the actual supply chains that we needed to protect ourselves during the pandemic that they caused, they cut those supply chains off. They commandeered American factories in China that would serve us products that we need, and they went all around the United States hoovering up the personal protective equipment, the medical equipment that we needed in the United States. They had their companies hoover that up across the United States, send it back to China, and then they took over our factories in China. So they cut us off from the supplies we needed to survive the pandemic that they caused.
Okay, really strong points there, Michael, today. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.
Coming up, even though millions of Americans suffer from chronic back pain, often there is no physical explanation for it. Vital Signs, Brendan Fallon shares insights from a pain management doctor into how pain is learned by the brain. Stay tuned.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
For 65 years, Mathis Home has been helping you create the room of your dreams at great values. Come celebrate with anniversary savings store-wide. Check out their amazing selection of upholstered beds. Here's a hot buy. This modern queen bed is covered in a soft, luxurious fabric. It's available in 2 colors for just $5.99. There's over 100 bedrooms in stock, so you're sure to find the style just right for you with fast, free delivery. Come celebrate with 65th anniversary savings at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back in stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
Just coming in, there's another shooting this morning at a church in Michigan with multiple victims. It happened at the Church of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, a township near Detroit. Local police say there are multiple victims and the shooter is down. There is no threat to the public at this time. Police also said the church is on fire. Attorney General Bondi just posted on X saying the Justice Department has been briefed. She also said such violence at a place of worship is, quote, heartbreaking and chilling, and asked for prayers for the victims. FBI Director Kash Patel called out the violence, saying such violence in a place of worship is a cowardly and criminal act. He also said FBI agents are on the scene to assist local authorities. I'm joined in studio now by NTD Health correspondent and host of Vital Signs, Brendan Fallon. Vital Signs offers natural and nutritional ways of optimizing our health. It's good to see you, Brendan.
Good to see you, Chris.
What do you have for us today?
Well, I think good news for many Americans out there suffering with chronic pain, back pain in particular. It's a huge problem in this country. There's over 25 million Americans experiencing this. And the good news is that there may not necessarily be a physical explanation, a physical basis for it, and it's something that can be unlearned. Pain is something that is learned in the brain, and there's the potential to unlearn it.
Wow. So what does that mean exactly? I mean, that almost sounds like a foreign language.
Well, I interviewed Dr. Howard Schubiner, and he followed on the work of Dr. John Sarno, who became very famous in the 80s, and many celebrities since, like Larry David, the co-creator of Seinfeld, Jimmy Kimmel, Howard Stern. They've come out and been very outspoken about the benefits they've received from this mind-body approach to dealing with chronic pain. And here we have Dr. Schubiner in the soundbite explaining the principle behind this. Just as a start, Dr. Schubiner, could you illustrate this concept a little bit for us, that pain is created in the brain?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, this is how the brain works. This is really a revolutionary concept in thinking about medicine, because modern medicine, you go to a doctor, you have a disease, you have something that's wrong, they do tests, they find the problem. You have appendicitis, we'll take it out. You have cancer, it needs treatment. Those are structural disorders that need medical treatment. So medical treatment can be extremely effective in those cases. But there are a whole host of maladies where there's no actual structural damage in the body. And the revolutionary part about what we're doing is, and I base this on 20 years of experience in doing research on this, is that most people with chronic pain actually don't have a structural damage in the body to account for their pain. The pain is real. It's not imaginary. It's not fake. It's not their fault. They're not crazy. But it's because of how the brain works. And what you were alluding to, I'm sorry for the long introduction here to get to the answer, but what you were alluding to is that our brains literally create what we experience. We don't see with our eyes. Light comes in our eyes, but our brains create the images that we see. The same with hearing. And when you touch a hot stove, it's not your finger causing pain, it's actually the brain. And so the brain can create pain that is real in the presence of physical injury, obviously, to protect us. And it can also create pain in the absence of physical injury when there's something going on in our lives that might be particularly stressful or emotional. And that is mind blowing when you see it on an everyday basis.
You know, it's so interesting. I experienced some of what he's talking about firsthand. I mean, the news industry is pretty stressful, and there was a time where I was feeling especially stressful and for like a few days or weeks. And then my neck started to develop this pain that slowly built up to become this serious annoyance. So I was talking to one of our cameramen, actually, our wonderful cameraman, and he suggested that I just relax. And I did. I took a bath and really made sure to try to calm down and just let go of whatever I was stressed about at the time. I don't even remember. And it kind of worked like magic.
I know it's amazing. And I think there's probably countless people experiencing a similar situation to what you've described there. Chris, myself, when in the course of working on this, doing the research and looking at examples of people who had benefited, the lower back pain I had when sitting on a chair has disappeared. I think, and largely what's involved with these therapies is it's unpacking the expectation that there will be pain. You know, people, they might have a physical injury at one point, and they start behaving in a way that to protect that joint or that area, and they kind of build up this expectation that there is damage there and they're going to have pain. And when you start to unpack that, it kind of somehow opens up a window for relief.
Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like a lot of people might react negatively to the idea that, you know, your pain is in your mind.
Right. Truly, yeah. I mean, I think some people would have kind of almost a defensive mechanism, like,
sure,
this is real. Like, don't try and tell me what I've been suffering for so long is in my head. But there's a real science to this, and there's research that has been led by Dr. Schubiner, where they've done placebo trials. They've used a particular therapy that he does called pain reprocessing therapy, where they're examining the expectation around that pain. They're exposing people to these situations where they'd expect to have pain, and kind of it's like a gradual exposure therapy, desensitizing them to that. And the results for that were over 60% of people who saw benefit, compared to the placebo, which was 20%, and people who just continued their normal treatment, which showed no major change.
It sounds like a mind vaccine almost. We have another soundbite from Dr. Schubiner. Let's watch that.
So Michael Porter Jr., his back pain was due to a neuroplastic condition. In other words, the pain was real, but it was generated by the danger signal in the brain. And so then the next step is, well, gee, what's causing this danger signal in the brain to be generated? You know, is it that you twisted and turned and you became so fearful of moving that you did less and less and less, and your brain just learned that pain as a learned neural circuit and it just continued kind of as a bad habit? Or was it also due to stuff going on in people's lives? And in Michael Porter Jr.'s case, he had a brother who had a lot of difficulties, so a lot of family issues that was really weighing on his mind, and that was part and parcel of the cause. So we have a variety of treatments for these neuroplastic pain conditions, and it's not only back pain. Of course, it can be tension headaches, migraine headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, chronic pelvic pain, a whole variety of things. It can also be chronic fatigue, insomnia, anxiety disorders. So all these things, when they're actually caused by the brain, we can reverse them or eliminate them by lowering the danger signal in the brain. And that may be due to, and we can do that through two main processes. One is reversing the neural circuits in the brain by calming and soothing the danger signal. And another is the emotional types of work that you're alerting to with the expressive writing.
Yeah, that goes right back to what I was saying earlier about, just relaxing.
Right, and it's very interesting in Michael Porter Jr.'s case, the fact that he was journaling, he identifies that as one of the activities that helped to reduce his pain, which by the way, he'd missed 100 games from a number of NBA seasons due to this pain. That's the extent of it. He'd had back surgery. None of these things made a difference, but this technique helped him. And journaling, so it kind of points to the fact of just how much people are kind of dissociated from what's going on in their bodies. They're caught up in their daily routines, maybe a bit like what you're experiencing, Chris. They're not actually registering what's happening in their bodies, and or they're not registering their emotional states as well. And in Michael Porter Jr.'s case, it was this problem with his brother. It's kind of weighing on his brain, and it manifests as physical symptoms.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It just makes me think about this time in my life where I did a lot of journaling. I was trying to figure things out, and a lot of things were happening. And just that experience of slowing down and becoming aware of like what I was actually feeling and all the big decisions I had to make at that time. It was really important, and I just think there's so often in the modern world we're moving so fast. There's so much happening in the news, on social media. Our lives are constantly changing. People change careers like a dozen times during their career, and it's like you can just forget to pay attention to how you're actually feeling about what's happening to you, and then those feelings just sort of get buried and then build up and maybe manifest as back pain.
That's right, and that's what's being seen. And there's this whole kind of slow living movement that's gaining momentum, particularly with younger generations, where they're consciously making an effort to step away from using devices or using them less, and they're really prioritizing their health.
Yeah.
Also things like different mindfulness practices like qigong, meditation. These things have been shown to people suffering with PTSD, for example, which can often involve chronic pain symptoms. They're getting relief from doing things like mindfulness meditation, qigong, because it's kind of raising that awareness of what's happening in the body, bringing people's minds.
It's so important to spread that awareness, and that's why we're happy to have you on. Brandon, thank you.
Pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
To see that full episode of Vital Signs with Dr. Schubiner, just go to your web browser and enter ept.ms/ease back pain. Coming up, governors of the Carolinas declaring an emergency in response to potential tropical storm Imelda, just 1 year after Hurricane Helene devastated that region. We speak with an Epoch Times reporter who was recently in North Carolina covering the response to Helene. Stay tuned.
With almost 4 decades in the spotlight, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. With her gorgeous, age-defying skin, US Weekly says, whatever she's doing, it's clearly working. How does her skin still look firm, smooth, and youthful at 58? It's meaningful beauty. And now, with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever, delivering our age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin to fight wrinkles where they begin. Just wait until you see the difference meaningful beauty can make for you.
Instant hydration, instant plumping. My skin looks amazing. What I'm most proud of is over 5 million women have trusted Meaningful Beauty, and they're getting great results, and I get that feedback from them in airports, supermarkets, walking down the street, and I love it.
And today, we are celebrating 20 years of Meaningful Beauty with a brand new offer you don't want to miss. You can get the entire advanced Meaningful Beauty system with all 5 age-defying super treatments. And when you order today, you'll receive our Targeted Treatment Duo, a $128 value free. Introducing the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules to target crow's feet, forehead lines, and lines around your mouth. Plus, you'll also get the new Skin Renewing Facial Tool with heat, massage, and red light to boost the absorption of the wrinkle smoothing capsules and reduce the appearance of puffiness. The skin renewing facial tool and the wrinkle smoothing capsules together create Meaningful Beauty's amazing targeted treatment duo.
This plus this equals incredible results.
Get all this, a $300 value, for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
If you haven't tried Meaningful Beauty yet, this new offer is something you don't want to miss.
This special offer is not available in any store, so don't wait. Scan the code, call the number below, or go to meaningfulbeauty.com right now.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. We'd never make a separate dinner. And never do that. We'd never let them sleep in our room. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris. Okay, well, I'm not at my desk right now.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Here are today's top stories. President Trump deploying troops to Portland, Oregon. He says it's to protect ICE facilities under siege from Antifa and other domestic terrorists. Trump will meet with top congressional leaders Monday, less than 48 hours before a potential government shutdown. Governors of the Carolinas declaring an emergency in response to potential tropical storm Imelda just 1 year after Hurricane Helene devastated the region. We speak with an Epoch Times reporter who was recently in North Carolina covering the response to Helene.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
President Donald Trump ordered Saturday that troops be deployed to Portland, Oregon. It's in response to escalating clashes outside federal immigration facilities. In his announcement on Truth Social, Trump said the Secretary of War should provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. He also said he's authorizing full force if necessary. The ICE facility in Portland has drawn frequent demonstrations that at times have erupted into violence, leaving federal agents injured and prompting assault charges against several protesters. Earlier this month, protesters set up a guillotine outside the site, an act the Department of Homeland Security called unhinged behavior. DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement that the action is being taken after weeks of violent riots at ICE facilities and attacks against law enforcement. An ICE facility in Portland has been repeatedly attacked by Antifa-linked militants throughout the summer. This kind of anti-ICE violence happened in other so-called sanctuary cities as well. Last week, 3 people were shot at an ICE facility in Dallas, Texas, as I'm sure you remember. The DHS's new move comes after President Trump designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Democratic Senator from Oregon Ron Wyden says in an ex-post, quote, "Stay the hell out of our city." This move is the latest attempt of the Trump administration using the military as part of a push to reduce crime in American cities. The governor of Oregon responded to Trump's announcement Saturday.
In my conversations directly with President Trump and Secretary Noem, I have been abundantly clear with them that Portland and the state of Oregon believe in the rule of law, and we can manage our own local public safety needs. There is no insurrection, there is no threat to national security, and there is no need for military troops in our major city.
Next, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump are scheduled to meet at the White House on Monday. The two leaders will discuss the 21-point Gaza ceasefire agreement proposed by President Trump. In an interview with Fox News on Sunday morning, Netanyahu confirmed that Israel would be willing to allow Hamas leaders to leave Gaza in exchange for the release of the remaining 48 hostages and an end to the war. Netanyahu's office confirms he has canceled his scheduled participation in a Jewish news syndicate conference in New York City this afternoon. The Israeli Prime Minister is reportedly using the time to prepare for his meeting tomorrow with President Donald Trump in Washington. Trump says in a post Sunday morning, quote, "We have a real chance for greatness in the Middle East. All are on board for something special. First time ever. We will get it done." Just coming in, a shooting this morning at a church in Michigan with multiple victims. It happened at the Church of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, a township near Detroit. Local police say there are multiple victims and the shooter is down. There is no threat to the public at this time. Police also said the church is on fire. Attorney General Pam Bondi just posted on X saying that the Justice Department has been briefed. She also said such violence at a place of worship is, quote, heartbreaking and chilling, and asked for prayers for the victims. FBI Director Kash Patel called out the violence, saying such violence in a place of worship is a cowardly and criminal act. He also said FBI agents are on the scene to assist local authorities. As the government shutdown looms, Senate Democrats will hold a conference call today as the caucus discusses strategy. And tomorrow, top congressional leaders will meet with President Donald Trump at the White House. The 11th hour meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer comes after Trump canceled a meeting earlier this week with Democrats Jeffries and Schumer. A shutdown will begin Wednesday if Congress can't strike a deal by the end of Tuesday night. Also this week, the White House Office of Management and Budget has asked federal agencies to prepare for a reduction in force, the government's term for a layoff, as Senate Democrats maintain their position of forcing a government shutdown. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has the details.
The President of the United States is saying, I'm going to take away your health care, and if you stand up for that, well, then I'll turn around and lay off people, fire workers.
Senate Democrats who refused to extend government funding past September 30th are now blaming President Trump for taking preemptive action on an imminent government shutdown by preparing a reduction in force of non-essential federal government personnel. The Office of Management and Budget's letter to federal agencies seeks to rein in spending in preparation for a lapse in funding that may start on October 1st if Senate Democrats refuse to fund the government.
Well, let's be clear about where we are. House Republicans passed a continuing resolution last week to keep the government funded and open. There is not one legitimate reason that Democrats should not support a continuing resolution. They have voted for it every time when Joe Biden and Barack Obama were president.
The messaging from Democratic leadership has been to portray the expiration of COVID-era healthcare tax credits as a Republican choice to cut healthcare, despite the fact that it was Democrats who set the expiration of those premiums back in 2021 through their Inflation Reduction Act reconciliation bill.
Republicans have made their intentions clear as it relates to healthcare of the American people. They want to destroy it. Republicans have spent the entire year destroying the health care of the American people. Our position is clear. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care.
Republican leadership remains open to discuss some form of extension of these health care credits. Senate Democrats will have another chance at avoiding a government shutdown next week when the Senate will likely vote again on the House-passed continuing resolution.
A lot of these folks get auto-enrolled. The payments are made directly to the insurance companies. Like I said, this is a program that needs reform, but I think everybody is willing to sit down and talk about how to make that happen in a context where it should be discussed, not as a hostage to keep the government open. I mean,
it's important to note that despite being in the majority in both chambers, Republicans have conceded to maintaining current levels of government spending instead of reducing them. President Trump supports congressional Republicans' efforts to maintain the government open and avoid unnecessary reductions in force of the federal government. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
From a major UN speech and moves against domestic terrorism to changes on health policy, the Trump administration takes on multiple fronts. NTD's Daniel Monahan has your White House Week in Review.
On Sunday, President Trump and other top administration members spoke at a Charlie Kirk memorial service.
He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose.
Around 200,000 people showed up in Arizona for the event. At the UN General Assembly in New York on Tuesday, President Trump called uncontrolled migration the #1 political issue of the time.
Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders.
Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after his UN address. He later wrote on Truth Social that Ukraine could get back the original borders from where the war started. Trump also hosted a meeting of Muslim leaders on the sidelines of the UN gathering.
And we're here to see if we can get the hostages back and get the war over and get back to life in the Middle East.
Turning to health, Trump held a White House news conference saying that prenatal use of Tylenol and vaccines could be tied to autism risk.
You shouldn't take it during the entire pregnancy.
Senator Bill Cassidy said there's a concern that women will be left with no options to manage pain in pregnancy. President Trump welcomed Turkish President Erdogan to the White House this week.
It's a pleasure to be with President Erdogan of Turkey, and we've been friends for a long time, actually, even for 4 years when I was in exile, unfairly, as it turns out.
An ICE facility in Dallas, Texas was targeted in a shooting, leaving 1 detainee dead, 2 more injured.
The radical left is causing the problem. The right's not doing this. They're not doing it, and they better not get them energized because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people.
The alleged gunman, who took his own life, wrote anti-ICE on an unused bullet. Trump issued a presidential memorandum on Thursday aimed at countering domestic terrorism.
These are anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired by wealthy people, some of whom I know, I guess.
We are properly going to chase them down like the domestic terrorists that they are, and our streets and our communities are going to be safer.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Former FBI Director James Comey was indicted, accused of making a false statement and obstruction in a criminal case.
My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system.
He did terrible things at the FBI, and but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
President Trump welcomed the elite Marine Corps silent drill platoon to the Oval Office, personally presenting each member with a presidential challenge coin.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We appreciate the opportunity.
What's my honor? You're great people.
President Trump attended the 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black. Golfer Scotty Scheffler says Trump treats everybody the same and with the utmost respect.
Whether you're the person serving us lunch or the caddy on the golf course or the guy who's the president of the club that we're at, he treats everybody like they're the greatest person in the world.
And the Elon Musk-Trump thaw continues. The Trump administration announced it will use Musk's AI Grok chatbot for federal agencies. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, the United Nations denied press credentials for NTD and its sister outlet, the Epoch Times. The newspaper's editor-in-chief saying it is unacceptable that the United Nations caves to the Chinese Communist Party's censorship efforts on American soil. We have that and more after the break.
For 65 years, Mathis Home has been helping you create the room of your dreams at great values. Come celebrate with anniversary savings store-wide. Check out their amazing selection of upholstered beds. Here's a hot buy. This modern queen bed is covered in a soft, luxurious fabric. It's available in 2 colors for just $5.99. There's over 100 bedrooms in stock, so you're sure to find the style just right for you with fast, free delivery. Come celebrate with 65th anniversary savings at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week. Still couldn't pay the bills. Skipped meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive, and they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay," and I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
See, Smokey thinks I'm funny.
Welcome back. Poland scrambled fighter jets and briefly closed part of its airspace after Russia launched a massive strike on Ukraine that lasted more than 12 hours. Zelensky says Russia fired nearly 500 drones and dozens of missiles in the attack, killing and wounding civilians, including a 12-year-old girl. He's warning Europe that Putin won't stop with Ukraine. The latest attack shows how Russia's war is hitting everyday life in Ukraine, even as calls grow for tougher international action. Next, the United Nations denied press credentials for NTD and its sister outlet, the Epoch Times. NTD's Don Ma taps Alex Newman, award-winning international journalist, to discuss.
You mentioned the Chinese Communist Party, and you know what's crazy to me? As you know, China and Cuba sit on the UN Human Rights Council, right? How does the council have credibility when those countries who are accused of torture, persecution, or even forced organ harvesting hold voting power?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and this is something that I have been pointing out for well over a decade in my reporting in the New American Magazine and also in the Epoch Times. I did a piece a few years ago in the opinion pages of the Epoch Times pointing out that the CCP and a lot of these autocratic regimes have a very different understanding of human rights than Americans do. In the United States, our Declaration of Independence says God gives us rights and government exists to protect those rights: life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. The UN's understanding of rights can be understood just from reading its documents, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 29 says none of these rights and privileges can ever be used contrary to the purposes and principles of the UN. It's a radical redefinition of rights. And so that's why the CCP, that's why mass murdering dictatorships can sit on this Human Rights Council and pretend to be all in favor of human rights, while simultaneously criticizing a country like the United States, Western countries, for clinging to real rights. It's very perverse, but I would urge people to consider the fact that this is very deliberate. This is an effort to reframe rights not as something that is unalienable, something that precedes and supersedes government, but rather as a privilege that the government in its kindness gives you and that the government in its wisdom can take away at any time.
And Alex, can you talk to us as well about what specific or diplomatic tools or economic tools does Beijing use to influence the UN?
Well, it's been doing this for a very long time. They have a school of global governance in Beijing where they're training up thousands of operatives to infiltrate the United Nations. And we've seen this very openly, right? Normally, when someone goes to work for the UN, they take an oath to the international organization and promise to renounce their political parties at home and even the interests of their own nation. The CCP has been very clear that any member of the CCP who goes to work in the UN must obey the CCP. When Meng Hongwei was arrested, he was the head of Interpol back when he visited China again. He was supposed to have diplomatic immunity. One of the things that the CCP said about him was that he wasn't obeying the dictates of the Chinese Communist Party. Why we would have a CCP card-carrying member running the global law enforcement agency, or at least the wannabe global law enforcement agency, is something that I think people really ought to be asking themselves. But CCP operatives, including card-carrying members of this terrorist criminal organization, are at the highest levels of the UN across its 15 specialized agencies, and they now dominate huge swaths of policymaking in this global institution.
And Alex, you wrote about this as well. So I wanted to ask you something specific about the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. How has the CCP embedded itself within UNESCO's leadership and key initiatives, for example, like Education 2030?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a problem that goes all the way back to the founding of UNESCO. You have had communists from China and from other countries in the leadership going back to the very beginning. Now, if you look more recently, at this moment, one of the top deputies of UNESCO is a card-carrying member of the CCP. The leader is a publicly declared socialist, and the previous leader was a publicly declared communist, Irina Bokova. She was a member of the Bulgarian Communist Party. She actually served in a senior role as this regime was slaughtering hundreds of thousands of innocent people, and they almost promoted her to UN Secretary General. So what the UNESCO is doing is it's putting communist Chinese propaganda and communist propaganda generally in the education systems of countries around the world. And the danger of that cannot be emphasized strongly enough. We're talking about the next generation of leaders, political, business, and otherwise, and they're being indoctrinated as we speak with this kind of propaganda. Thankfully, Donald Trump has announced that we're leaving from this, but the head of UNESCO publicly responded and said, well, we're going to keep working with our American partners anyway. So it's a big threat.
So, Alex, I told our reporters earlier about this. The United Nations, again, denied press credentials to several reporters from 2 U.S. media companies, the Epoch Times and us, NTD, right? How can it justify barring these companies from covering its meetings? I mean, we're simply exercising our fundamental rights to a free press.
This shows you the influence of the CCP. There is no doubt in my mind that this was an instruction from the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I do go to many of these UN meetings. I was at the UN General Assembly, the Summit of the Future last year. I go to the UN Climate Summits every year. I'll be at the one in Brazil in just a couple months. And I do occasionally submit articles to the Epoch Times from these meetings. But what we see is when a government is powerful enough, they can dictate policy at the UN. We saw the Canadian government get rebel media banned from there because they asked tough questions about climate change. So this shows you the corruption that exists within the UN, where it's taking its orders from a murderous regime, from a murderous political party. And it shows, I think it should show Americans very clearly that this is not an institution that's aligned with our values. It's not an institution that's aligned with the values that our country was founded on. That makes it extremely dangerous.
President Donald Trump on Thursday signed a memorandum to combat domestic terrorism and organized political violence in the United States. How much of an impact could this have in rooting out political violence? NTD's Don Ma spoke to Gerard Felitti for his take. He's a senior counsel at the Lawfare Project and an attorney specializing in counterterrorism. Watch.
Can you tell us how significant is this move that this is being described as the first all-of-government effort against domestic terrorism, calling for coordination among the DOJ, DHS, the Treasury, and state and local agencies?
That's precisely what makes this so comprehensive. It is a new comprehensive way to go after domestic terrorism, and specifically against politically motivated terrorism, which we have seen both in the assassination of Charlie Kirk and in a lot of the activities that have been taking place in this country. We see this in the rioting, looting, allegations of doxing law enforcement officers, especially ICE agents. We see that a lot of these cases, there seems to be organizations behind them that are funding them or that are coordinating them. So this designation, this creation of a mechanism by which different joint terrorism task forces will work together, pool resources, and prioritize domestic terrorism, this is really a first of its kind approach.
How effective do you foresee this being? How much of an impact could this have in rooting out political violence?
I think it could have a significant impact. When you look at what this is at its basic level, it's not dissimilar to laws that already exist about conspiracy. When you look at different events and people acting in concert to engage in acts of violence, whether it's political or otherwise, it's plain and simple conspiracy. But this is something that's often not used by investigators or prosecutors. They look at that one actor or that one incident in isolation. And what Donald Trump's order effectively does is to pool resources to look at the bigger picture when people are working together, when they are conspiring. And this is under the rubric of domestic terrorism, so that gives the government more resources in order to investigate.
Can you define that for us specifically under current U.S. law? How is domestic terrorism defined?
Well, domestic terrorism comes into play in a few statutes, but what President Trump is doing is not currently in existence. There is no mechanism to designate a group as a domestic terrorist organization. The FBI has its own definition, which it uses with groups that engage in organized extremist violence, but there is not a formal designation process that exists across the whole of government. So that is something that we will very much see whether President Trump will create that through his executive actions, through the Justice Department or Homeland Security, for example, or whether he will work with Congress to create that designation process similar to what we have for foreign terrorist organizations. So that criteria is a little bit up in the air, and it remains to be seen exactly how that's identified.
So if that's the case, does the president have the legal authority to designate domestic groups as terrorist organizations? What does the law say?
He likely does. This comes within the purview of his role as chief executive and through the Justice Department and Homeland Security. And again, we have that framework for looking at groups that engage in politically motivated violence. These are criminal acts first and foremost. Whether we're labeling them as domestic terrorism, the only real significance, apart from the resources that are freed up by the government to investigate, come at a prosecution stage. And right now, all of these crimes can be prosecuted for what they are: murder, assault, doxing, interfering with law enforcement. They don't need that additional label of domestic terrorism. The label right now is being used in order to put federal resources into investigating the crimes and prosecuting the offenders. If you want to create a separate category of crime, that would require an act of Congress.
So, Gerard, I mean, we're seeing this already. You know, for those who may feel this order falls into the realm of targeting critics, how would you respond to that?
Well, I think it's not about targeting critics. I think it's about transparency and openness. I think that a lot of Americans don't necessarily see that when there are these riots, these actions, these violent and aggressive actions, whether they're towards law enforcement or towards minority populations on college campuses, as we've seen in the last 2 years, there are oftentimes organizations behind them. These are not spontaneous riots or spontaneous protests of citizens expressing their opinion, but rather they're coordinated, they're funded by someone. And I think what President Trump's, the importance here, first and foremost, is an emphasis on transparency. The public deserves to know who is behind these groups. And if those people are engaged in criminal conduct, then they need to be prosecuted. But this is the first step. It's the investigative process of discovering who is behind Antifa, who are the people and organizations behind all the violence and crime that we're seeing.
But I mean, Gerard, even if there's someone behind these protests, I mean, people still have the right to protest, right? Does this order clash with the First Amendment?
They absolutely have the right to protest, but they have the right to protest lawfully. Where this clashes with the First Amendment is if it has the effect of chilling speech, if it forbids people from participating in otherwise protected activity. That's unconstitutional. But what we're looking at is we're not looking at peaceful protests. We're not looking at people who are expressing their opinion. We're looking at acts of violence, acts of aggression, literally acts of terrorism, which is why they're classified, or why President Trump is classifying them as domestic terrorism. He doesn't want to look at people peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights. Instead, he's looking at people who engage in criminal conduct beyond the speech.
So what about this, Gerard? Are there concerns, regarding labeling individuals who perhaps may be associated with Antifa, just as an example, as a threat, even if those individuals have not engaged in violence themselves? Is there concerns in labeling those people?
I think there are always those concerns that we want to be careful through the investigative process that we don't mislabel people or identify them as engaged in actions or conduct that they are not actually engaged in. So I think that is where the real danger lies, in mislabeling people or identifying them as members or participants in a criminal conspiracy or a criminal scheme when they have actually no part in that. They're just acting on their own free will, on their own First Amendment rights. And this is where the investigative process is really important. What President Trump is doing is providing a framework for the investigation, but we still have to trust the FBI, DHS, federal agents, police officers to properly investigate and only bring cases and only label people when there is proof of their conduct, not just what they're saying in speech.
Okay, Gerard, just one final question, and staying on Antifa. You know, some argue that Antifa is closer to a leaderless movement than an organized terrorist group. I mean, how do you target that? Can we get your comments on this?
Well, Antifa is in many ways a lot like Hamas, Hezbollah, and other organizations. You don't have that centralized command that's publicly known. You have different cells, different groups of individuals who get together and act in concert, in unison. But all of this it's not transparent. There's no public website that lists the leadership. But there are people behind the scenes. There are people who are funding this. There are people who are creating the messaging. There are people who are directing where to protest and what to do. And that's what most people don't realize. This isn't just well-meaning individuals who think that they're well-meaning and gather together spontaneously. There's a level of organization that goes on behind it. And that's what this executive order is designed to do, to go after, to investigate what that structure is, to make it more transparent, and when it engages in illegal conduct, to hold responsible the people who are behind it.
Okay, Gerard, terrific insight. You make it look so easy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Coming up, just 1 year after Hurricane Helene devastated southern states, governors of the Carolinas are declaring an emergency in response to potential tropical storm Imelda. We speak with an Epoch Times reporter who was recently in North Carolina covering the response to Helene when we come back.
With almost 4 decades in the spotlight, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. With her gorgeous, age-defying skin, US Weekly says whatever she's doing, it's clearly working. How does her skin still look firm, smooth, and youthful at 58? It's meaningful beauty. And now, with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever, delivering our age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin to fight wrinkles where they begin. Just wait until you see the difference meaningful beauty can make for you.
Instant hydration, instant plumping. My skin looks amazing. What I'm most proud of is over 5 million women have trusted Meaningful Beauty, and they're getting great results. And I get that feedback from them in airports, supermarkets, walking down the street, and I love it.
And today, we are celebrating 20 years of Meaningful Beauty with a brand new offer you don't want to miss. You can get the entire advanced Meaningful Beauty system with all 5 age-defying super treatments. And when you order today, you'll receive our Targeted Treatment Duo, a $128 value free. Introducing the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules to target crow's feet, forehead lines, and lines around your mouth. Plus, you'll also get the new Skin Renewing Facial Tool with heat, massage, and red light to boost the absorption of the wrinkle smoothing capsules and reduce the appearance of puffiness. The Skin Renewing Facial Tool and the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules together create Meaningful Beauty's amazing targeted treatment duo.
This plus this equals incredible results.
Get all this, a $300 value for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
If you haven't tried Meaningful Beauty yet, this new offer is something you don't want to miss.
This special offer is not available in any store, so don't wait. Scan the code, call the number below, or go to meaningfulbeauty.com right now.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School
college first round draft pick during the football season, I would stop eating. But I didn't know I was depressed. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father and as a husband.
We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
Welcome back. Officials in the Carolinas declaring an emergency, asking residents to prepare for potential tropical storm Imelda. If the storm makes landfall, it will probably hit Monday or Tuesday, a little more than 1 year after Hurricane Helene devastated these southern states. Epoch Times reporter Darlene Sanchez recently visited Yancey County in western North Carolina to learn about the response to the storm and the state of recovery efforts there. She joins us now. Darlene, welcome. It's good to see you again. When you were in the Carolinas recently, I bet you didn't think the region would be staring down another potential storm almost exactly a year after Hurricane Helene.
No, of course not. I mean, there are people there that went through so much. I think that's probably the last thing they want to think about. But unfortunately, of course, they may be faced with something like that.
Now, you were there speaking with people, seeing how the recovery efforts are playing out. How prepared are the people of Yancey County for yet another potential storm?
I think they learned a lot from what happened to them. That county had the most rainfall, and it also had the highest wind gusts of any county, I believe, in North Carolina. So, you know, what they had to go through was even worse than what we saw, because it was kind of like it hit them the worst, of course. But I think through all this, they've learned, you know, how to deal with the, you know, the bureaucracy that's part of disaster relief. So if something should befall them, you know, God forbid, but I think they would be better prepared in terms of dealing with the disaster, in terms of applying for aid and for, you know, through FEMA and that, you know, sort of situation. But I've got to tell you, they are still recovering. So if something else hits them, it would really set them back. It would be horrendous for that community.
So they're still recovering. Things haven't been fully rebuilt.
Right. Exactly. I mean, when I was there, there were, you know, houses that they, you know, the outside of them, you know, still had up like their insulation. There was no siding on the houses, you know, but they were livable at least, and people were living in them. There were some people, of course, that still have nothing. I talked to one of the survivors there, Dave, and he was telling me that his house actually, you know, he watched his house float away. It was swept off its foundation, and he watched it, you know, go down the river. He was lucky to survive. He got in his car with his dogs and drove up the side of the mountain as far as he could get himself, and just waited and hoped. And the water came up to the back tires of that vehicle. And so, you know, he said he was lucky. And, you know, he said he was prepared to, you know, to keep moving if that needed to happen. But, you know, he counted himself as lucky in surviving something like that.
Yeah, and in your article, you know, people usually don't understand how fast stormwaters can rise in a storm like that. I mean, in your article, you describe that man walking from one side of his second floor to the other to get to the exit door, and by the time he got to the other side of the building, his small house, the water had risen above his ankles. It's just horrifying, and I can only imagine what the people there are thinking, staring down, you know, a potential storm. Hopefully, it goes off into the ocean. We still don't know entirely. Now, you also reported on how the fire chief for Double Island there in Yancey County, Double Island Fire Department, called FEMA's response a revolving door. What did he mean by that?
He said that, you know, they've been in this process now for, you know, a year, and that, you know, there would be one person assigned, you know, to their case, for a better word of it, you know, their claim. And then, you know, you turn around and 3 or 4 weeks later, there's another person assigned to it. There was no consistency. There was no continuity. And so it was like, you know, you can imagine you've got a new person coming in every month, and they're having to catch up on the situation. And that was very frustrating to them and other citizens in that area. They would just shake their heads. And some, the assistant fire chief told me, he's like, some of these people just gave up. It was just too much. And the community, though, I guess the silver lining to all this is the community really pulled together and they helped each other.
Yeah, tell us more about that. What kind of stories did you hear of people coming together, helping one another out? I mean, this is a rural area. FEMA can't exactly get to this place very easily.
Yeah. In this particular county, it was about 30 days, of course, some maybe a little less, some more, before the electricity came back on. But before that happened, what everybody was doing is, a lot of people around there had chainsaws. It's a rural community. They have, farm equipment, heavy equipment. So they got out immediately after the storm and started, cutting logs off roads that were blocked to neighborhoods and to people's homes. And they got, equipment out. They also started delivering, food, water, generators, gasoline to some of these homes that were up in the hollers, like on small 4-wheel drive vehicles, like side-by-sides or off-road vehicles. And so they were able to get up in some cases, like through the fields and cut that way to get, past the trees, because wherever the trees were, many of them were just snapped and lots of them blocked roads. It was really a difficult situation for them.
Yeah, it's just always so wonderful to hear about people coming together to deal with these things and to unite. One of the people you spoke with said that, political boundaries were just not even anywhere in anyone's mind. So it's nice to hear that. And we're all just praying for everyone in the South, especially during hurricane season, which is right now. Epoch Times reporter Darlene Sanchez, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The U.S. and China are colliding on multiple fronts, from military ties to trade and immigration rules to social media. The ripple effects are seen everywhere, from American farms to your smartphone. Starting off, Russia is stepping up military cooperation with China. It's reportedly training Chinese troops in airborne operations and even sharing expertise on airdropping armored vehicles. A defense think tank says this could boost Beijing's ability to take over Taiwan, while the U.S. has remained deliberately vague on whether it would intervene. Taiwan, meanwhile, is ramping up defense spending and showing off new anti-drone systems. And while Washington watches Beijing closely, there's also friction on the economic front. China just announced it will give up some special trade perks it's been receiving as a developing country under the World Trade Organization. Developing countries do get more time to live up to trade agreements. They also receive assistance from abroad and are exempt from some rules that richer countries must follow. The US and Europe have been pushing for that change, arguing China has too big of an economy to keep those benefits. At the same time, President Trump says he'll use tariff revenue to support American farmers who've been hit hard by China's halt on U.S. soybean purchases. This comes as China turns to Argentina for its soybean imports instead of the U.S. due to ongoing trade tensions between the two countries. TikTok is staying alive in the U.S. for now. President Trump signed an executive order approving a deal that turns TikTok's U.S. operations into a new American-led venture, with Oracle acting as security provider. The move is meant to protect data from Chinese influence while keeping the app's millions of American users online. Coming up, stress can cause tensions in our bodies, headaches, and other issues. We share some tips after the break on how to manage your stress levels. Stay tuned.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you.
On streets across America, young people are homeless, abused, in danger. Covenant House is helping young people with nowhere else to turn. But the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month. You'll help provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. Homeless young people are afraid and alone. Your monthly donation right now will show them they are loved and safe.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life.
Call or go online now and give just $19 a month. We'll send you this comforting blanket as a reminder of the difference you're making in a young person's life. Call or go online now to safeplacetosleep.org.
What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete. But it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org.
Welcome back. Stress affects us all. It can potentially cause tension in the body and headaches. What habits can we put in place to claw it back? Epoch Times health reporter and certified naturopath Sheridan Genrich shares her tips.
I just want to ask, with stress, it seems like when it's hitting you, it comes all at the same time. So what habits can someone put in place to kind of claw that back a little bit, take some of the power back?
Yes, there are quite a few things because our body is wanting to feel safety, and that's what those signals of imbalance with stress are sending to our mind and our body. And really it starts obviously with eating well and maintaining good sleep, but I talk about those all the time, and there's other things like other strategies that are science-backed or without medications that can make a real difference. A couple being routines. So having a daily routine creates stability for your nervous system because our rhythms want to sync with nature. And so daylight is when we should eat and move, and then darkness sends a signal to sleep. Then there are other micro habits that you could try, like setting a timer so that you have pauses and micro pauses in your day, and use an alarm if you need to. But this is going to help you to have a break and reflect on what you're feeling. I suggest you breathe deeply at those moments and tune into your emotional state. It's just a practice. Yeah, it's a practice called emotion labeling. And labeling alone actually sends safety, and then the breathing anchors those inner state shifts in your body. And obviously repetition helps.
Oh, could we run through one of those things right now with you? How would you teach someone how to do this? So you might just throughout your day have a moment where you get an alert on your phone or something like that. And then what would you do?
Well, I would first of all breathe, because that is really helping you feel like what your body is like. Often we're in our heads, we're thinking too much. And being in front of TV, it's going to be something you practice a lot. Then checking in with, is your heart racing? Are you feeling calm? Are you feeling comfortable where you are? Or do you want to reset for a moment? Because
so join us at home, folks. Okay. How are you feeling, Carrie?
Oh, I'm feeling the stress subside with the deep breathing.
I mean, it is true, even though I didn't feel particularly on high alert right now, but even just taking that moment to check in with yourself, give yourself that acknowledgement and just say, how you doing inside? That's quite nice. That calms. You can always get more calm than wherever you're at, I think. So that's a really nice thing. Any other practices? Yeah.
Some people want to move. So if we're sitting at a computer a lot and you've got stressful messages coming in through email or media, which also I suggest looking at positive media and inspiring content. But we can also take micro walks. So walk around the office, get outside if you can, because fresh air, sunlight, and movement send the endorphins of positivity into your body as well. There's other things I wrote about, like gratitude and just noticing the things that in your life that you're feeling appreciative of. This isn't just,
Sorry, you know what's so funny about that? I do feel sometimes people can get the advice to have gratitude and feel that it's kind of glib or something, like it's like too old-fashioned or something. Maybe it's not effective. But how would you recommend someone implements this perhaps in a strategic way into their life so it becomes a habit?
Yes, I'm not a journal writer. I write for a living, so journaling gratitude lists was not going to work for me. I am someone that likes to embody gratitude. And so when I feel thankful of my, that's embodying gratitude is really nice. Also, some people are more verbal and they want to express through their words in maybe calling a friend or someone on the street, someone gives you a coffee, just thinking of other connections. And that's the other part that I wrote about. The social connections is really sending that signal of safety to our nervous system as well, because humans didn't survive as an isolated being and we're wired for belonging. And this is the research is really solid on relationships that buffer stress and lower our cortisol levels.
Now, Sheridan, Mike Tyson would say everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. So what do you do when you get overwhelmed by something? How do habits help you deal with the thing that feels like an emergency?
Yes, success leaves clues. That's what I would say. Things don't happen by accident. It seems like it's just a random occurrence. But I've noticed in practice and also inspiring talks that I listen to help me to get a new perspective. And it's practicing these things and then just seeing how different you actually feel, because we're all work in progress. And this is where, unless we actually apply these theories, it's just something like shelf help. And this is where the last one I mentioned in the article was about vulnerability as well. And that when we're trying to feel like our world will be perfect at some point, it's also setting us up for just an inability to cope. So I would try a few
clues. Success leaves clues. I love that. Thank you so much for all of your clues this morning. I'll be trying out some of those. Appreciate your time today, Sheridan Genrich.
Some wonderful stress management tips there. Now we have some breaking news. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has just announced that he is ending his re-election campaign, shaking up the mayoral race.
Who would have thought that a kid from South Jamaica, Queens, growing up with learning disabilities could one day become the mayor of the greatest city in the world? It has been my honor to be your mayor, and I'm proud to say that we took that victory 4 years ago and turned it into action, making this city better for those who have been failed by government. Despite all we've achieved, I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the Campaign Finance Board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign. But I must also sound a warning. Extremism is growing in our politics. Our children are being radicalized to hate our city and our country. Instead, I urge New Yorkers to choose leaders not by what they promise, but by what they have delivered. Although this is the end of my re-election campaign, it is not the end of my public service. I will continue to fight for this city, as I have for 40 years since the day I joined the NYPD, to make our streets safer and our systems fairer.
Adams had opted out of the Democratic primary to run as an independent. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani won the Democratic primary in June over former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo is now also running as an independent. A retired NYPD captain, Adams was elected in 2021 on a platform focused on public safety and economic recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic. For his re-election campaign, he has been struggling in the polls, trailing Mamdani, Cuomo, and Republican Curtis Sliwa. It's not clear how much Adams' exit would benefit Cuomo. All right, that's all for today's news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay with us for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.